So we've slowed down the pace last time a bit to let NumPy think a bit. And today we'll continue with two subjects. So let me summarize like we do every time everything that we did so far. So we're adding every time more stuff. So last time we went through more advanced topics in NumPy, and I showed you how to start coding defensively with the try except blocks. I've checked, someone asked me what's the finally block for. Do you remember? So it's still not very clear to me. Cases where you would need the finally block, but it's not used that much. So I would say the try except part is the main thing that you have to remember. And Google is full of examples where they tell you that finally is actually adding something to your code, but I didn't get convinced yet. So when I will be convinced, I will try to convince you. But yeah, the try except parts are the parts that you need to have in mind. We spoke about the PDB package and how you can use it to stop running your code. And today we'll go a bit more into two topics that should help you to code defensively and debug your code. And then we will do a short break and we'll start talking about Pandas, which is super important. So I hope everybody received the email we sent asking you guys to bring your laptop. So what we will do in the second part when we speak about Pandas, you can be by pairs. Are you pairing in the tutorial? Do you do things by pairs? So if you want, you will be able to do it by pairs. You can also do it on your own. But what we will do is that I will show you for Pandas, I really want you to experience in real time. And the exercises in the tutorial will be more sophisticated than just trying the commands. So what we will do is that I will explain you what the command is doing, and then you will try it yourself, okay? And we'll go through the commands and you will try it in real time, okay? I've loaded an example file to the Moodle. Everybody has access to the Moodle, right? You can access it from here, right? So maybe during the break you can download the file that I've put on the Moodle, and we'll do it this way. Okay, so this is our plan for today. So let's try with more defensive coding. So there is a command that I personally don't use it that much, but I think it's a very useful one if you get used to using it. It's called the assert command. And it's a bit like the try except idea, but you should use it more for real debugging. Okay, the try except blocks that we spoke about last time, you can put it in your code and use it for debugging, but you can also leave it there permanently and forget about it, and it can really become part of the logic of your code. This command, the assert command, should be used more as a temporary thing that you just for debugging purpose, okay? But it's doing a similar thing. It's checking if a condition returns true or false, okay? And if it returns false, it does something. And if it returns true, it doesn't, okay? So this is an example. We have a list here, and I want to check whether the list is empty. Okay, so I put an assert statement here where I checked the length of this list. Okay, so if it returns, if this is false, okay, it will tell me, it will return this message. Okay, and it will not execute this thing, it will skip this thing. If it returns a true statement, then it will execute whatever is here. Okay, and this can be very useful for quick debugging. I will show you an example in a second. You can also assert several conditions. Okay, it doesn't have to be one condition. So here there is an example with a condition that is made of two statements. And you can you can put tons of assert statements in your code, and you can then, when you run your code, you can silence them. Okay, so I haven't figured how you do it in PyCharm, but if you run, does anyone run his code from the command line? Okay, so Jonathan does. Okay, so you can just, with one letter, silent all your assert statements if you run it from the command line. From PyCharm, this won't work for everybody, so I can check till next time what you need to put in PyCharm in order to silence these statements. But the idea is really to have something temporary in your code that helps you for debugging purposes. So I will show you a short example. Okay. So let's go to our PyCharm statement. Okay, so let's say I have a string. Okay, and we need to change the font, right? Font 28. Okay, so let's say we have a string that says hello, okay, and I want to use this assert statement. Okay, so I write assert x equal hello, equal with a double equal. Okay, and it can be a bit confusing because assert can be understood as check that, but it's the opposite. Okay, if this will react if this statement is false. Okay, if this condition returns true, nothing will happen. Okay, so let's try. Okay, nothing happens. Now let's change x and call it pi. Okay. So what will happen now? This condition is false, so it will raise an error. Okay, we saw last time what we mean by raising an error, and the type of error that will be raised is an assert error. So let's look. Okay, assertion error. Okay, so if this is false, it raised this error. Okay, and I don't know if you realize, but you can fill your codes with these kind of statements to check that things are behaving like you expect on the way. Okay, it can be really, really useful. Now, let's see if I want to add a message. Okay, I want it to print x should be hello. So this is one way to do it. Okay, so it's checking if this condition is true. It's not, so it raises an assertion error, and it adds this message that I asked it to add. Okay, so you see here it added this message. Now, what if I add a condition on top of it for I in range then print I. Okay, so since this is false, okay, if this is false, this thing is going to be skipped. Now let's bring it back to hello. Okay, it's checked that whether this condition is true. Okay, and then it's executed the following command. Okay. Okay.
לגבי מה שמת את הלולת for לפני האסרט, מה היה קורה?
אני רוצה רגע להראות לכם בדיוק על זה משהו. Okay, so this condition will now return false. Let me check one thing. X equal I. Okay, so if it's true, it's executing it. If it's false, it's basically raising the error. And it's actually exiting the code. Okay, so this was one topic that I wanted to show you.
רגע, יש לי שאלה.
כן.
מה אם היית שמה את לולת for לפני האסרט?
אז הוא היה עושה אותה.
ואז הוא היה עושה error?
Okay. Now the next thing I wanted to show you that it's not that much about debugging, but it's just a way to keep track of what's going on in your code, and it can be very useful for it can be very useful for debugging. It helps you keep track without overloading your either your terminal or your PyCharm terminal. And it's a package called logging, okay, that allows you to keep track of how things are running in your code. And there are 5 different levels of how chatty you want this functionality to be. Okay, so the debug mode, I will show you in a second what I mean, but the important thing is that it can run in these 5 different modes. Okay, the debug mode will be very chatty. It will tell you everything it can tell you about what's going on, and it's going from the most chatty to the least chatty. Okay, for the critical level will only report you things that are really critical. Okay, that makes your code break. So I'll give you an example. So this is to be more specific. Debug will return all the messages, and you see here a detail of all the different messages that it can return. So the way you use this package, you do import logging like you do for every module. And then you can say the default configuration that you want. So if you want your logging module to show you debug messages by default, you can set the level of verbosity in this way. Okay? And then when you want your code to return a certain message, okay, you can use this module to return the comments that you want. Okay, So for these two, I will show you an example in a second. But let's say you want you're debugging your code and you want your code to tell you this NumPy array has a size of 10 by 10. Okay, it's important for you to keep track of the size of this array at a certain point of your code. Okay, so you would add this line and it will tell you the array is indeed of size 10 by 10. Okay, but you don't want this message to be returned when you're not debugging your code anymore. You don't want your code to tell you about this. Okay, so by specifying here debug, this message will only appear if you are in debug, if you are debugging things. Okay, I'll show you an example. But so the way I use this package is if I want everything to be logged into a file, into a text file. Okay, sometimes you don't want your terminal to be flown. Your code runs for hours. Okay, you don't want to have to scroll up in your terminal to keep track of all the errors. And sometimes you need to save these errors. Okay, and you cannot just copy paste hours of terminal or PyCharm terminal and save it. Okay, so you would want your code to save all the logging into a specific file. So you can specify here a file name. Okay, you can specify a level. Okay, let's say you only want this file to contain the debug mode messages. Okay, so you specify here the logging level, and it will save to this file all the logging messages that have debug in it. Okay, make sense?
איפה זה שומר את הקובץ?
מה?
איפה זה שומר את הקובץ?
באותו, it saves the file in the same directory where you are on. But, I mean, you can also give a path here. Okay, if you give a path, say desktop, blah, 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 it would save it to your desktop. So it's not just a name, it's actually a path. And you can also add more information. You can add a format for the time. Okay, if you want to keep track, let's say your code is running for 1 hour and you want to keep track of the hour at which each of the debug messages appears. Okay, so you can specify here a format that gives you the time and the message. Okay, and then you can leave your code to run, come back after 2 hours, open the log file and see exactly what it did and when. Okay, so this too can be super useful. It requires a bit of preparation and anticipation on your side. Okay, it's just in the same way that the try accept block is working and the asserting. It requires that you anticipate all the time what kind of errors can happen. Okay, but the more you anticipate, the less time you will need to spend on debugging. Okay, so this anticipation time is time you're saving, basically. And if you anticipate enough, you will have a nice log file with all the errors you could just think of, which will be ready for you to read. So let's give an example of this logging. So you import it. I think it comes together with Anaconda's distribution. And do you know if you have it? Okay. Okay. So you import logging, and then you need to specify. You don't have to, but it's better to specify the default level of verbosity. Debug. Okay.
You don't need a file that says.
No. So I will show you now what happens with the file and without the file. Okay, so let's assume that we first use it without a file. Okay, so this is a debug message. Okay, so I run the code and it's returning me a message, but it's not stopping the code from running, as opposed to the assess statement that we saw before. If I do here print hello world, okay, it continues. It doesn't stop. This is an important distinction from the things we saw before. Okay, when we spoke about PDB, about the the try except, it moves on if your exception is not raised, but the assert thing, it would stop the code and give you an assertion error. Okay, this is logging. This does not prevent your code from running. It just keeps track of what happens when you run your code. Okay, so this is one option. Let's look at so this is an info message. Okay, and you can put here critical 2. This is a critical message. Okay? Okay, now let's specify a file, and I will use here, I will tell you in a second what I'm putting here. Okay, so I'm commenting this, and I'm now using this basic configuration. So what do we have here? We have a log file, okay, which is log.txt. I could put a path here, okay? Yes. תזכירי לי מה השם?
נחלה. שאלה כללית, זה מחפש לנו שגיאות כאילו?
לא.
לא למדתי מה לוגים בסט.
לא. So Nahala is asking whether it's looking for errors. It's not, okay? Do you know what? So logging, the meaning of the word, it means keeping a log, okay? Keeping a log, it's like מחברת מעבדה, okay? A log is basically a notebook, a physical one, where you keep track of what's going on, okay? So it's not looking for errors. The only value of the various level, debug, info, is that it specifies how chatty you want your code to be. So if you remember, when you run your code, very often it will tell you things on the way, right? When you run a code, it doesn't just return the output, right? Very often it will tell you things on the way, even things that are not errors, okay? And if you don't specify messages like we did, this is a debug message, no? So it will still return things, okay? And the various levels that you specify in logging are just specifying how chatty you want your code to be when it runs, okay? Chatty is patpetan, okay? How much you want it to tell you what is going on, okay? You may only want to keep track of critical error in this file, of critical errors in this file, okay? So in this case, you will specify it, but it's not looking for only for error or errors. It can keep track of whatever it finds on its way.
תוכל להדגים את זה?
כן. אז רגע, אז...
How is it keeping track if you write the messages?
Okay, so let's give you an example, okay? I'm going to take you through the command here, okay? And then we'll run something and we'll see what it saves in the file and what it doesn't, okay? So in this basic configuration, I've specified a file name, okay? So it's going to keep track of things in a file called log.txt, okay? And then file mode equal A, it means append. Okay, do you know what it means? So it means that it's not going to overwrite things in this file. Whatever is already written in this file, it won't erase it. It will write it after what is already there. Okay. If you don't put this message, whenever you put a logging.debug or logging.info with the message, it will overwrite what's already in this file. So if you don't want this to happen, you need to specify file mode equal A. But you should be careful that if you already have a log.txt file in your directory when you start your code, it will happen things there. Okay? So what I do is I remove all the log.txt file in my directory before I run the code. You can also do it automatically with you can also put a command in your code, os.rm, okay? It removes the log file before it starts running. Okay, remember we talked about the standard library OS module that allows you to manipulate files. We talked about it briefly, but this would allow you to remove the log file before you start. Okay, then here I specify the format that I want for my messages.
Can you show the whole line?
Yes, I don't, and to be honest, I don't know it by heart, okay? I've Googled it once, chose the format that I liked, okay? So it's going to show me the time.
Is there a comma and then spaces?
Let's look at the file, how it saves the message, okay? I've specified the date format, the time format in a way that I found pretty readable. Okay, and then I've specified the default logging level. So let's see now what happens if we do this. Okay, so I ran this. It didn't return any of these messages into the terminal. Okay, why? Because in the basic configuration I told it to put things in this log file. So let's look at the log.txt file. Okay, so it shows me the time. Okay, these are all time instruction, and this is giving me the format, so it's hours, minutes, and seconds. Okay, I think name is this root thing is what is specified by name. Okay, and then it's giving the level name. So in this case I gave it a debug, a critical, and an info. Why didn't it do the debug thing?
Because the level is in level.
Yes. Okay. So this is an important. Point. So when I specify logging info, okay, this specifies the minimum level of message that it will save in the text file. Okay, so if you remember, okay, I told you that we're going from debugging, info, warning, error, and critical. Okay, so if I specify the level as info, it will keep a record of all the messages that are starting from info, from the less critical to the more critical. Okay, and this is the reason it didn't kept track of the debug message, because the debug message is considered more chatty and less of a, in terms of levels of verbosity. Okay, Does it make sense? Let's try to change this if we put critical instead. Critical, and I should remove, so let's remove log.text, okay? One sec. So if I put here critical, okay, let's look at the log. Okay, so you see that here it only saved the critical message. Okay, is it clear for everybody? So the level that you're specifying is the level of the minimum. It's the minimal level that it will keep a record of. If you want to keep a record of everything, you should put here debug, because we saw that this is the lowest level. Okay, and if I do this, I should remove again log text. If I do this, okay, let's have a look, and you see that here it saved all 3 messages. Nala, okay, make sense? הבנת? לא? I will explain it once again. So these are all the levels, different levels of messages. Okay? Debug is the lowest level, then it goes higher and higher. Okay? The reason it's ordered in the opposite order is because I wanted to show you more chatty from least chatty. Okay? So these are different levels. Now, let's assume that I've set in my basic config, I've set the level to be debug. Okay? If I set the level to be debug, it will record in the file all the messages from debug to higher level. So it will, if I put info message, it will save them, warning, error, etc. Okay? Now let's assume I've set the default level to warning. Which message will it record? Which? So you tell me. Warning, error, and critical. But if I put a debug message, it won't be there in the file. Okay, if I write down the debug message in my code, it will not appear in the file because I've set the level to be warning. Okay. Okay, so we're good to go.
אפשר לעשות הפסקה?
אפשר, אני אמרתי שתהיה הפסקה, אז אנחנו נעשה הפסקה. האמת שבאתי להגיד שאנחנו יוצאים להפסקה, אבל כן, עוד מעט. I'm thinking if I forgot anything about the logging, but I think we're good. Okay, and in the next, so are there any questions either on assert or on logging or more generally what we discussed about defensive coding?
אמרת שהדיבאג ממש נותן, מעיר על המון דברים בקוד, כאילו זה...
כן, אז, so, Dvir is asking about the chattiness of the messages. So the problem is, in order to demonstrate this, I would have to write a code now and show you. I don't have a code already, code that has various levels of chattiness to show you, okay, this message is going to the logging and this is not, okay? But this is something you should experience on your own codes, okay? The reason I cannot show it is that I'm not using logging in an existing code here. I'm demonstrating it just in a code that has been designed to demonstrate logging, okay? But if you use logging in your code, okay, it's something you should really try, okay? Try to specify various level for the logging level and see what kind of messages it records in your file, and what, if you don't specify a file, what kind of messages it chooses to return you as a logging message, okay? Okay, so now we will do what's the time? We'll do a 10 minutes break until 12:50, okay? And if you can just download the file during this break, it's a 1 minute. So it appears. Can someone open the Moodle? I will show you where it is. Okay, so there is on lecture 7. You can go to lecture 7, and there is you can type example. So you can click on example. Does it allow you to download it? Okay. So click on it. It will download it. Okay. Everybody, let's take the break once everybody has the file, and then you have a real 10 minutes break. So, who hasn't managed yet?
Do we need a plugin supporting CSV? Or
What?
It's asking me if I want to install plugins supporting CSV. There's no need, right?
CSV is just an extension of text files, and it stands for comma separated values, I guess. So it's just the most basic text file, okay, where you have rows and columns that are separated by commas. Okay. Okay, so did someone not manage to download?
I cannot log in my Moodle.
You cannot open the Moodle?
Yes.
So can someone send it? What's your name?
Choya.
Choya.
Can anybody send me by airdrop?
Yes, can someone send it by email to Choya?
Are you in Doron's WhatsApp group?
Yes.
Okay, who is not doesn't have it yet? You all have it?
מה אמור לקרות?
We're waiting to go on break. So who is missing the code, the file? Everybody has it?
No, I still.
מה אמור להיות בפייל?
You're about to say
I'm
this.
saying.
I'm in the.
Yeah, אתה שואל.
So okay, so put it in the directory where you're running PyCharm.
Oh, I'm not sure if it's gonna work. Does that link work?
Let me.
Which one?
It's not work because I cannot log in it.
Yeah.
I need the-
1 second.
Sao lại có cái sao lại
一下。
第几个？
Example for Pandas.
Okay, can we go on a break? I don't want people to deal with downloading this file once we're back from the break. Okay, so if you need help, do it now.
I get it. Thank you.
Okay. Good. So okay, so it's now 12:43. Let's come back at 12:53. Okay, 10 minutes.
זה אמור להיות קובץ אקסל.
כן, כאילו פה CSV.
בטח זה עובד לך רק עבור ריבועית, לא? תנסה 3. יש לי בלגן במחשב. כל פעם אני צריך לגשת כל פעם צריך לגשת.
הבנתי מה אמרת לי. הבנתי מה אמרת לי.
45, 32.
אני לא בדקתי אותו, הוא היה 13.
לא, אני הגעתי בשיעור.
כן, בטכניון, שאלתי גם את זה.
מה?
סתם, לא, על מי דיברתם? על מי דיבר? הוא דיבר על מישהי שלמדתי איתו. אוקיי, רון כתב...
איך נעשה את הקיצור דרך?
מי? לא יודע איך הוא נדמה. נראה לי הוא גם לא יודע איך הוא נדמה. אוקיי, ואז הגבת לו? כתבתי לו.
מה?
בסדר? דיברתם על מתמטיקה? לא. דיברתם על מתמטיקה? זהו, היה כתוב שם. פייתון בטכניון. והוא לא הגיד שזה בטכניון.
97. 104. 948.
ואם אתה לא תבוא איתנו,
יאללה, 500, 400,
נחלל את השעון הקדוש.
85, 94, 12.
אם מיכל מזמנת אני מסכים.
אנחנו נזמן עם מיכל.
67,
אני רוצה לשמוע.
לימוד רפורמי.
65, 56,
מה פיגר עושה?
19,
פיגר עושה
901.
יותר מזה, עכשיו דווקא לעשות לך דווקא
איזה רנדום אני.
במקום להוסיף את כולם, אתה צריך לא בהכרח כל
כלומר את כל השמות של האדם. יש להם קרקר, ואז מספרים את החרוזים, כל חרוז. אני יכול לקרוא בחמישה שמות, כל חמישה שמות הם מעבירים חרוז.
כמה שמות יש?
זה כמו כמה שמות, זה כמו השמות לירושלים. זה כמו השמות לירושלים, זה מין קטע כזה, לדברים חשובים המון שמות.
ככה עומד לעלות פה.
כן, זה לבחור שבאטומית.
לא.
כמה שמות יש לאלוהים ביד?
מלא, אבל מלא שהוא עמד ויחצים וגם כל אחד מבטא משהו
לא, עוד לא.
מעניין.
אבל זה כבר רק כמה
96, 9.
קבלה זה
אוי ואבוי.
זה כל כך עממי.
כלומר, אתה צריך לראות את מה להשתמש.
אין פה 99.
אוקיי.
לא,
יש משהו בינם תיצור פונקציה שמקבלת.
אין לזה?
פונקציה שמקבלת.
כמה זמן נשאר לה...
אולי יש דרך שמקבל מהמשתמש. לעבוד קשה.
אולי יש.
נמפאי, אין הרבה.
אתה רואה, ואז כאילו אחרי כל
למה?
לא כזה, במטלח יש הרבה.
פייתי 33 שמות. אבל יש עוד מצב, פה האמת לך, ובדיעבד הייתי נורא נחמד.
באמת?
לא כזה. כי כולם לוקחים אותו לשלב הבא, אתה מבין? כזה באים ודופקים לך שם דברים של...
יש נסבר באיזה גיטה בו...
זה הנדיר.
של ההוא, של...
אתה מקרב לפעמים טלפון?
סבבה, אתה מאחורי האוזן. פה.
אני לא מסוגל
כל פעם
לעזוב את
שאני
הרעיון.
באוטובוס עם אנשים אחרים, הם עושים טלפון.
גירת
צירף אותו.
תגיד לי איך אתה מגרד ככה?
מעיין?
כן.
אתה לא יודע מה שאתה לא רוצה לספר.
לא.
השתמשתי
אין בזה הרבה
במעבדה
כסף.
שלי.
מעלה את רמת העניין.
לא, אני בגלל שיש לי אור רגיל, שאלתי
יש כאלה שם לייבלס על כל מיני דברים,
פעם היינו משלמים
אני לא הייתי...
טייט לייר? אתה רוצה להראות לי?
אני לא יכול עכשיו להראות כי סידרתי את זה בצורה...
שמו מתכות האלה
להזיז כל אחד למקום אחר, אבל יש איזו פקודה שפשוט אומרת לו...
שאלת
לא מצאתי, כאילו יש שם כמה אנשים
איך זה הגיע עד היום?
איך
המוטציה עשתה עד היום?
בשביל הנוטיישן, לא בשביל כל דבר.
השתמשת ב-BLT annotate?
יש לך בן אדם ש...
אני לא יודעת, כאילו הדבר הראשון זה לכתוב
אתם המטורפים, אני לא יודע איך אתם עושים את זה.
כאילו כבדים, וזה עובד רק לאנוטיישן, ואני רוצה לראות...
לא, אז הדבר המיידי זה פשוט לכתוב matplotlib ו-deal with overlapping annotations ולראות באיזה מומנט.
זה לא
בדרך
קבוע.
כלל טייט לייר לא רק מתמודד על זה, בדרך כלל הוא מתמודד עם הדברים עצמם.
אני ממש אשתם את זה גם כמובן. זה היה
אז צריך כאילו לחפש בסוף, כאילו, אני לא אשקר שלי כבר קרה שאני אמרתי, אתה יודע, חשבתי לו בדיוק איפה לשים את נתתי לו את ה-XY של הנוטיישן, שהוא לא... גם יכול
כמו שמעון ולוי.
נכון, שהתנוך הוא פה, הוא כאילו כאן.
ההורים שלי התרפו מקולי אבישי או...
אבל לא מה, יש כאלה, אתה יודע, יכולים לראות את המרפק כאלה.
או שאול. כן, לא שאול.
פגעתי.
לנו לא לקרוא לי בשם לא מהתנ"ך, ממש בשפת רבי. כאילו היו כמה דרכות, זה יכול להיות יותם כזה מהתנ"ך.
זה תלוי.
הם התלבטו בין
תלוי
אבישי.
אם אתה עושה מתפתחות, אבל אם לא, כאילו אחרים קשים, לא יודע, וזהו.
זה יכול להיות שיטאי.
יש נגיד אני יודע, אני יכול לתת לי את ה...
זה יכול להיות יונתן.
יש את ה...
זה גם, אפילו יונתן ואיתי, זה השמות הכי גנריים שלנו.
זה כמו דוד שלי, בערך בגובה שלך. כמה אתה אומר? כן, זה לא 90.
לא יודע, לא...
לא, אני אומר לך, אתה תגבר קצת.
תראו, מה זה השאלה?
כן, אבל זה אנחנו עוד עם
יואו.
ברוך מרץ.
מה זה, הגיע לך לבגובה?
נשכנע אותו. נשכנע אותו. ואז הוא ישכנע.
לא, אם נתנזה לחשוב על ה... יש שם של בת
ניסה לחברון ואני אנסה לסדר פגישה.
הראש לה הגיע לי...
אני בעצם לא כן.
יש לה את זה, כן.
אבל מערת המחשב שאר המקום
לא הייתי.
היינו שם בשבת.
לא היית מעולם? לא. הייתי פעם
וואי, תשמע, אני
וגם דגת ההוא בחרדה.
אני למדתי...
לא, הקו הירוק בכביש הזה שבין ירושלים ומודיעין. כי הנהג בשירות לקו
לא, בעיקרון כל פעם שאני נותן שם לקובץ, אז אני קורא לנגלקט של
קורא, אבל לך תזכור...
אז עכשיו צריך להבין.
פסטה, לא יודע מה זה פסטה.
פונקציה שנמצאת בפסטה.
עכשיו סקרנתי שלה. גם לקובץ. נגיד בינארי.
טוב, נתחיל.
קופי פסט. קופי פסט.
אני מתחכם עליו. היום אין מיקסוס, 7 פלאס.
טוב, כולם חזרו? Everybody's here? אז a small introduction on Pandas. Okay, so what is Pandas? Pandas is just a very good package for handling data. Okay, and you may think to yourself, why do we need Pandas? We already have NumPy. We saw this np gen from text command that allows us to read data files into a large array, and we can do all kind of cool data handling in NumPy. Why do we need Pandas? And so first, you're not the only one to wonder this, and Pandas is a relatively new package. Okay, I would say a few years. Okay, it became super mainstream in the last few years. I started using it during my postdoc. In my PhD, it wasn't. I don't think it existed. So it's true that we already have NumPy, and there are several advantages to using Pandas. The first one, do you remember that we had these issues when we had mixed type of data in our file? Remember that I made a text file where we had numbers and strings, and if we loaded it as numbers, then the string became a none, remember? And if we loaded it as strings, we had to cast. Remember what we mean by casting? Casting is converting between data types. So if we loaded it as strings, we had to turn the numbers back into floats, etc. So NumPy is not very good at dealing with mixed types of data. Okay, when you load a file in NumPy, it will load everything as one data type, and we had this object type. Remember, we specified d type equal object. Okay, so we had this object type that allowed NumPy to deal with mixed types, but generally speaking, NumPy is harder to use with mixed type. Okay, so one reason to use Pandas is it's really versatile. Okay, you don't have to, you can be lazy. Okay, you can give it data to read, and it will know how to handle all kinds of issues. Okay, next time we'll see advanced topics in Pandas, and you'll see, for example, how it handles missing data. Okay, you may have lines which don't have the same number of columns, so NumPy cannot deal with this. Okay, it will, if you do NumPy gen from text with a text file that doesn't have the same number of columns in each line, it will complain. Okay, and Pandas can deal with it easily. So this is one reason to use Pandas, that it deals with all kinds of data issues. If your data is not the cleanest, it will know how to deal with it, or if it has various types. The second reason is that it has many methods. Okay, remember these like built-in functions that allow you to do all kinds of things without having to recode them. So Pandas has tons of methods that you can use as is to dealing with data. I will show you some of these functionalities today and next time too, but I'll just give you a small example. Let's say that you have a large text file with people ages, and people's names, okay? And you want to create you want to group your data into groups of people that all have the same name, okay? Or groups of people who were born between this year and this year, and you want the mean age for all the people named Hannah and the average or the median, I don't know, height of all the people who are born between 2 years, okay? So Pandas has a function called group by, okay, where you can write this in one line of code. Okay, we'll see this next time, but it has a lot of these kinds of functionalities that allow you to do really cool stuff with your data without working hard. And we like this, okay? So this, I would say, is the second reason to use Pandas. And I'm sure by practicing you will find out that it's indeed much more intuitive, and it's not necessarily more intuitive because there is something very nice about having your data in an array, okay, in a NumPy array, but you will see as we go that if you do the effort of learning these like basic Pandas tools, it becomes much easier than dealing with arrays. Yes?
How does Pandas save the data? Just in lists?
We'll see this now. Okay, but so this is a list of the things that we will go through today together. And next time we'll go through more advanced topic, and I will do a cheat sheet. Is that the way to put it, to say it? So cheat sheet, I never know how to pronounce it, but I will do a list of commands that you need to have very fresh in your mind for the exam, for the exercise, for your life as a scientist, okay? And the other things you are allowed to Google, but these things you need to have it in mind. Okay, so we haven't done it before. I suggest that I will show you group of functionalities, and then I will give you a few minutes to try it yourself, okay? Instead of showing you everything and then letting you practice, let's try to do it in parallel. And of course it assumes that you're here to learn Python and not navigate on Facebook or anything else that is available on your computer. But so, okay, so the plan is that I show you a few things and then you try it, okay? So let's do it. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is to import both Panda and Python, and NumPy, because we will be doing both to compare things. Okay, and the first thing that we will go through is how to create a Pandas object. Okay, what are Pandas objects? So in Pandas, we don't speak in terms of arrays. We speak in terms of data frames. Okay, and I will show you in a minute what we mean by data frames. But the way a data frame works, it's basically like a dictionary. You have keys, okay, which are the column names, and you have data. So let's create our first Panda data frame. So many times we call it DF, it's for data frame. And the command is data frame. Here, so I'm showing you now one way to create a data frame. So I'm putting here a NumPy array. Random 6. Okay. And I want the columns to be a list. So we have 6 lines and 4 columns. So A, B, C, D. Okay. So you try it. NumPy. You need to import NumPy as NP and import Pandas as PD. Okay? Right. It's random. Okay. Okay. So everybody tried it. So let's have a look. What? Okay, so let's look at what we did here. Okay, I used this data frame function. Okay, and here I gave it a NumPy array. This is our data. Okay, and here I gave it the names of the columns. Okay, and it created this data frame which has this data and these columns, and here there is an addition. So these are the columns. This is the NumPy array that I gave it, and here we have an additional columns which is called the indexes. Okay, and this can be anything. You can index it by names of flowers. Okay, but by default it indexes the data frame with integers. Okay, and this is also an important column. So everybody did this? Okay. Now let's try to create a data frame in a different way. So I now want to read the data frame that I've sent you guys. Okay? So to do this, you do read CSV. And bit, okay, df, sorry, equal pd read CSV and the example file. Okay, so now it's loaded the data from the file that you've downloaded, okay, into this data frame. Now, if you look at the example file, we don't have an index here. You see? This is the file. We don't have indexes here, okay? Panda is creating indexes.
בפנדה זה נראה הרבה יותר טוב.
בפנדה זה נראה הרבה יותר טוב? נכון. Okay? And this is one of the... Okay, so let's try now to...
Can you also give names to the rows?
So these are the indexes. I will show you in a second that I can give names to rows too.
Okay.
But what I'm going to do now is to change this into a string. Hi.
Should we do two?
Yes, you can if you want. Okay, and if I do this, look at the magic. It knows how to handle it. You don't have to specify anything. Okay? Now, let's okay, now I want you guys to stop for a second and look at what I'm doing now because it's important. You can also give names to indexes, to the lines. Okay? So let's go back to the, I'm now using the 6x4 data because I don't want to, if I remember well, the example files is like 20 lines and I don't want to give name to 20 lines. So I'm doing it with a smaller array. HIJKL okay? So you see that here I've specified the indexes, okay? And instead of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 5, it uses these indexes. Okay, so indexes are just like columns. They are names that we give to the lines, okay? And if you don't give them, Pandas will use integers by default, okay? Okay, so we saw 2 ways to load or create a data frame so far, okay? One way was so this is what we did here. So one way was to specify a NumPy array and a list of columns and a list of indexes, okay? You can also create data frame by giving Pandas a dictionary, okay? You see that here we can see this data as a dictionary, okay? Where the first key is A, and the data, the value, you remember the dictionary structures, we have keys and values. Okay, so one way to look at the data frame is to separate the data and the labels. Okay, this is what we just did. We gave, so here you see that we gave first the data and then we specified the labels. There is another way to see a data frame as a dictionary where the keys are the columns names and the values of each keys are the columns. Okay? You understand what I'm saying? And this can be a very useful way to look at things. So let's try now to create a data frame in this second way. So I will show you an example and then you will try yourself. You don't have to do the same example, okay? I will show you an example and then I want you to try your own example. So let me copy paste. Okay, so what did I do here? The font is so big that we don't see everything. Okay, so what did I do here? I gave it a dictionary. Remember that you can define a dictionary with these curly brackets. Okay, so first item in the dictionary was with key A and in an integer 1. Okay, then the second one was with key B and then the object I'm giving it is a timestamp. Date, okay? Then C is a series, and I chose this dictionary on purpose with a different kind of data type for each column, for each value, for each key, sorry. Okay? So D is a NumPy array. E, we'll see this, we'll see what categorical means, but you can put really any data type here, and you don't even have the size of the different values to be the same. You see that F, for example, is this string. I gave it one long string. I didn't give it an array of strings. Okay, so let's see what it creates when I do this. df2. Okay, so let's look at this together. Okay, so for A, I gave it one integer. So it's put ones, but it didn't put only one integer, right? It puts here as many integer as needed to make it a square, not a square, but a rectangular data structure. Okay? Then B is these timestamps, okay? C is this series, okay? Okay, D, it uses this NumPy array that I gave it, etc., etc. Okay, so this is the other way to make a Panda data frame, by giving it a dictionary where the keys are the columns and the values are the data you want in each column. Questions?
Yeah, so Maya, this is not a matrix. I can't refer it as a matrix.
This is a Panda data frame.
It's like a table, not.
Yeah, it's like.
You can do manipulations on it like a matrix.
You can or you can't? You're asking me if I can?
No, I don't know.
Yes, you can.
Oh,
You can transpose it.
Oh, really?
You can do operations, and so. Of course, if you have strings and you ask it to do some additions, it might complain that you cannot. You can add 2 strings, but yes, you can. You can do manipulations on this. We'll see in a minute how. Okay. So we saw 3 ways to create data frames. Okay. One way was by looking at the data, by separating labels and the data. The second way is by looking at the data like a dictionaries, where the keys are the columns names and the values are the data in each column. And the third way is by loading data from a CSV file. Okay? כן.
מה זה ב-C? מה זה האינדקס?
הסיריז.
כן, כאילו. ציט אחד ואז אינדקס ליסט ריינג'. למה זה דווקא...
זה קשור ל-PD סיריז שאני אדבר על זה בפעם הבאה. אבל מה שרציתי להראות פה זה שאני... עכשיו לא חשוב לי שתבינו בדיוק כל אחד מהדברים האלה מה זה. רציתי להמחיש שאתם יכולים לתת לפנדז דאטה טייפס שונים ומשונים והוא ידע איך להתמודד עם זה. בסדר? זה מה שחשוב.
ולמה יצא בסוף 4 שורות?
כי הדאטה הכי ארוך, הקולומס הכי ארוך שנתתי לו היה של 4. Okay, now let's go back to a simpler one. Okay, I'm going back to my simpler data frame. Okay, so what happens if I want to add the columns? Okay, I want to add a column. It works. So the way you manipulate data frames is the way you manipulate dictionaries. Okay, so let's assume how do you want to call the column? Let's call it blah. Okay, and a string. Let's see what happens to df. It's added, okay? It's added a column called blah. Try it. כן.
ב-df, בקולומס, כאילו בעמודות שעשיתי את הליסט ABCD, הייתה אפשרות לקרוא לכל עמודה בשם שהוא יותר מאותה אחת? כאילו, למה זה עשה את זה דווקא ככה?
כן, אפשר היה לעשות לו ליסט, לתת לו ליסט שהוא שלום, מה נשמע דביר, והוא היה קורא לכל הקולומזים. אפשר לנסות את זה. אוקיי, אז אני צריכה אבל שיהיו 4 דברים. אז columns is hi, how are you? סבבה, דביר?
כן.
ראית מה הוא עושה?
כן.
אוקיי.
וגם עם האינדקסים אפשר לעשות שכה?
כן. Okay, so this is to add a column. Now, how do I access a column? How do I ask it to print df hi? Okay? Maybe, okay, it doesn't, I've commented this out. So I'll ask it to print dfa. Okay? So dfa, what is it giving to? It's giving me these columns with these indexes. Okay, so dfa is also a data frame with 1 column. Okay, and you can ask it 2 columns. A, B. I think it works like this. Okay, so here I gave it a list of the columns that I want. It's created a new data frame with these two columns. Try it.
Why is it printing also the...
Because I told it to print df. I first told it to print df, okay? Okay. Everybody tried it? Okay, now let's just turn on again this you don't have to try. I just want you to look at it. Nala, you're good. רינת, הכל בסדר? אני רואה אתכם עושות כזה, הכל טוב?
צריך להשתמש בקובץ שהיינו צריכים לעלות או לעצור את ה...
אפשר גם וגם, אני רציתי שתתנסו ב-df read CSV. אתם יכולות, you can use the df file from the I wanted you to try loading data from a file, okay? We'll use it again in a few minutes, but for now you can create a smaller one if it's easier. Okay, so I just want to go back, you don't have to do this, to go back to this mixed type data frame for a second to show you that you can return the types of the columns. The command is dtypes, okay? So look, what do we have here? It's telling me, if I do dtypes, it's returning the types of each column. It's telling me A is of type floats, B is a timestamp, etc., etc., etc. Okay?
מה זה אומר ה-64 וה-32?
זה המספר ביטים שיש בכל פלוטים. לא יותר מדי קריטי כרגע למה שאנחנו עושים. זה פלוט, זה צורות שונות של פלוטים. כן.
It's always objects, there are no strings.
What?
Is string a type or it's just always an object?
Good question. So the last one, foo was a string. I don't know, but it's a good question. If Panda has a string, that's the options. Okay, so
מעיין?
כן.
אם יש שתי סוגים של דאטה טייפס?
כן.
אז יש לנו שתי שמות של סוגים?
מה?
אם אין לנו באותו, נגיד ב-A, יהיה גם פלוט וגם אין?
שאלה טובה. The answer is that I don't know, but we can try because remember that I put an A in the file. So let's do df is equal to pandas read CSV. Okay, and here you remember that is in NumPy gen from text you could specify the delimiter. So here too, if I give him the delimiter with an empty space, it will read it as one column. Okay. So I'm not doing it because the default delimiter is a comma, but you should know that you can do this. Okay, so let's do df. Let's ask it to print. Now let's ask what happens if in the same column you had various types. What would it print? So, okay, interesting. So what did it do? For A, it's read it as a float. For B, it recognized that it has both strings and float, so it read it as objects. You see here? Okay, float of in the second column we had mixed types, so it instead of saying we have a string and it changed it to an object type.
That
Okay.
means that the entire column is
It's read as an object. Yes, and it means that if you might have to do some casting. Right. Okay.
ב-D-Type כתוב, כאילו D-Type נקודתיים אובייקט. מה זה אומר? למה?
זה מה שאמרנו הרגע, זה אובייקט זה משהו שהוא לא יודע אם להגיד לך, למשל אם יש לך גם מספרים וגם strings באותו columns, אז הוא יהפוך את זה לאובייקט.
למה זה רושם את זה
ויאיר
בסוף?
שאל אם כל הסטרינגים הם תמיד אובייקט, אז אני לא יודעת ושווה לבדוק את זה.
לא, אבל למה בסוף יש את זה? כאילו, למה בסוף כתוב את זה?
כי זה הטייפ שהוא מזהה עבור קולומס כזה.
הוא מתכוון
אחרי D.
שורה חמישית. זה של הדאטה פריים כאילו?
לא, זה לא של הדאטה פריים, זה של D-type. זה של הדבר ש... אוקיי? D-types מחזיר משהו שהוא אובייקט. אוקיי? Okay, so I moved back to the simpler data frame. Why does it run it? Okay. Okay, so I showed you how to access the data frame by giving it columns names. And the next thing I want to show is how to access the columns names. Okay, let's see that I want to know what columns I have. Okay, so I would say print df columns. Comment this. Okay, so the columns, it's giving me this list. Okay, it's a series. Here again, it's giving it an object. But it's printing me the names of the columns and I can iterate through it. So if I do for I in df columns, print I, it will print me the name of the columns. Okay? So df.columns gives you the columns of your data frame. Good? You can assume that df.index is going to give you the indexes, right? Okay, so the indexes, it works in the same way. Okay? And you could also iterate through the indexes. Okay, now I'm going to give you a super important... So, did you try columns and index? I see people who haven't looked at me for the last 10 minutes, which means that you're too focused on your computer, and I want you guys to still be able to listen. So if you prefer, we can alternate. I can give you, okay, now listen, now try, but I trust you that you will do it. So, okay, try to remember to listen too. Okay, so I will now show you how to iterate through the rows of a data frame. It's also very useful. So the way to do it is the following. For index rows, but you can call it apples and carrots. Okay, you can try to call it apple and carrots. And there is a function called iter rows. Okay. Print df print, so rows A, rows B. Okay, let's put it the row is okay. So what it did here is that it iterates through the rows of the data frame. Of course, I'm printing it here, so just to tell it to do something, okay? But this is super useful, okay? If you want to, I don't know, do some operation on all the rows of your data or change something on all the rows, etc., iterating through the rows of your data can be really useful. So this is the way to do it.
גם מה iter rows עושה?
מה?
מה iter rows עושה?
הוא עושה איטרציה בשורות של הדאטה פריים. הוא הולך שורה. Okay?
מה קורה אם אני עושה פרינט לדבר?
Print, you can also do print rows. And you see that it's like an enumerate loop. You have a handle on the index too. Okay? Okay, so this was a parenthesis. It's actually making each row into a small data frame. Okay, now two more things. There is a tail, a head function and a tail function, which you can assume are giving you the tail and the head of the data. So let's specify. You can use here the, I would actually use the CSV data. Okay, so let's assume I want to show the 3 first line and the 4 last line. So let's separate it. You can try it. Head, tail. Okay, so you see that here it's showing me the first 3 lines of the files. Okay, and the last 4 lines of the file. And it's giving the indexes too, so you can make sure that it's correct. Okay? You tried it? Tail and head? Okay. So we went through columns, we went through index. Let's now show you how to convert. Sometimes you need to convert things into NumPy. Okay? It will happen.
Head זה
זה השורות הראשונות, וטייל זה השורות האחרונות, כן. So, df to NumPy, sorry, to NumPy. Okay, this is going to turn my data frame into a NumPy array. Okay, sometimes you will want to do this. Most of the time, the reason you will want to do this is because you remember how to do things in NumPy and you don't remember the better way to do it in Pandas. But sometimes you will need this. So let's see what happens if we do this. Okay, so you see that it's turned the entire data frame into a NumPy array. Okay, a 4 by 20. Let's look at the shape of this. Okay, it's a 20 by 4 NumPy array. Okay, so this is the way to convert from data frames to NumPy stuff. And here it worked with the high words that we put, but you should know that this operation, if you have mixed type, will not necessarily be handled properly. Okay, so again, when you want to turn things into NumPy, use NumPy. The red light that should be turned on is how it will handle mixed types of data. Okay, this is something you need to keep in mind. And the other thing that you might have noticed is that when you turn it into a NumPy index, does it include the indexes?
No.
It doesn't, and it also doesn't include the columns names, right? Which were actually in the data. So both columns and index names will not be included if you turn a data frame into a NumPy array. Yair, you had a question?
No, I just didn't do the parentheses. It turns out it does something completely different.
Okay. Now let's start with the really powerful stuff. Okay. So what happened if I do this?
Wow.
So this is just giving me a short, some short statistics of my data. Okay, it's giving me the length of the data, the mean of each column. So it's, you see that here it didn't know how to deal with this column that had mixed types. Okay, it doesn't know how to calculate the mean of high and numbers. So it shows the columns for which it knows how to do statistics. So the ones that only have numbers in them. And it's showing here the counts, so how much data I have in each column. And you will see that you can have columns with various lengths. You don't have to have the same amount of data in each column in the Pandas. Okay, you can have the columns with 20 items and the columns with 10 items. This can be really useful. So it shows you the count, the mean, the standard deviation, the minimum, the maximum. I think these are the percentiles.
מה זה אומר מין?
mean?
ממוצע?
mean זה המינימום, המספר הכי קטן בטור.
לא, התכוונתי לממוצע.
אז מה?
לא, התכוונתי לממוצע.
למין, ממוצע. Okay, so this is cute. You can also print specific. You can also get specifically the mean. Okay, if you want to do this, you want the mean of columns A. Okay. So the mean of column A is this, and you see that indeed it's the same here and here. Okay, so here I specifically asked it for the mean of column A. Let's transpose the data because it is actually like a matrix. So print df, print df. I think it's just a T. Yes. Okay. So df. This is df, and this is the transposed data. So you also have a transpose function in NumPy. We should be fair here, okay? But we didn't talk about it. So we should be fair to NumPy. You also have a transpose option in NumPy. But this is the one in Pandas. And I'm going to show you two last things before we finish. So so there is a function that is called reset index, df print df, and this is very important to use. For example, in cases I showed you how to iterate over rows. So whenever you iterate over rows, you will always want to do this reset index thing. What is it doing? So very often you do all kind of manipulation on your code. For example, let's assume that you have a data frame and you selected only the numbers, only the rows that have values above a certain limit, okay? So this reset index is creating a new set of indexes. Actually, I'll show you an example of this, a live example of this next time when we talk about sorting things. But okay, I have my simpler example. I'll show you here. So, 1 second. Index 6 lines is list. Okay, so what is reset index is doing here? It's made the original index into a new column called index, and it's made some new indexes which are integers. Okay, and often, and I will tell you, like especially when you do iteration over rows, you will want to make sure that you understand the indexes, and it's usually worth resetting your indexes so that you understand them and have an handle on them. Okay, so I'll show you one last thing that you might need for the exercises, okay? So we saw that to access a certain columns, you just use the same syntax as for dictionaries, right? So you can access by column. You can also access by indexes. Okay, so this will show you the first columns. This will show you the lines from 0 to 3, and it works in the same way as a list or an array. Okay, you can slice data frames in the exact same way you would slice a NumPy array. So let's look at this, and this will be our last thing for today. Okay, so column A, this is the entire data frame. This is column A. Okay, and this thing here is a new data frame. Okay, the same way that DFA is a data frame that has one column, this thing is a new data frame which has 3 lines and the same amount of columns as DF. Okay, do you see this? Try this before you go home. Okay? So these are 2 ways to select data, either by columns or by rows. Okay? Good. So these were the very, very basics of Pandas, and next time we'll go into more advanced things with Pandas, but make sure that the basics are crystal clear for you, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.